Saturday, we'll all be Facebooking, emailing, and Instagram. Happy Juneteenth. Finally, we've gotten some accomplishments. Although I'm a little mixed about it, I'm happy that they've actually acknowledged it. I'm happy that we have a national holiday in recognition of it. What I'm not happy about, Juneteenth and the 1800s, what I'm not happy about is the progress that we have today. And our progress has been impeded by people who have blocked us. Yet, here is the thing, we let them block us because those people who are in power and those governmental leaders and those people that we elect are controlled by us. But I digress. We had a meeting on our show, Mr. Owen Brown from the West Virginia NAACP. And as you all know, West Virginia is represented by United States Senator Manchin, who has been one of the biggest Republicans campaigning as a Democrat in our history. Now, after this meeting, after our Zoom and show, some exciting things have happened. And we're going to talk about that right after this break.
To small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. Maybe able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
A lot of people thought that this organization was dead. In fact, they were DOA in terms of talking to a lot of things and making some changes. However, the most important advancement for the African Americans nationwide has been the NAACP. They have been instrumental to the point where one of the biggest parts, the legal, was undefeated, and they had to make him a judge in the Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall. Through the NAACP, we have made incredible strides and advancements, yet by today's standard, a lot of our youth don't know the history. They don't know the power that it has, and they tend not to get involved. They did nothing to get it done. And as my father used to say, they don't have a clue, and they can't buy a vowel. So for those of you watching, because our demographic has a great deal of people between the ages of 19 and 22, I want to show you how we used to get things done. Now, with us from the great state of West Virginia, the president of the NAACP of West Virginia, Mr. Owen Brown.
How you doing?
How are you? Thanks for being on our show again.
Yeah, I'm doing good. The struggle continues. And, the struggle has been going for 112 years. And, tomorrow is, officially Juneteenth has become a holiday across the nation. But what I say is that Juneteenth never ended. That one day of liberation, and we've been for over 100, almost over 100 years, trying to liberate African Americans in this country. You know, it was a day of liberation, but it wasn't a day of freedom for African Americans, because you know, right after 1865, you got the Jim Crow era, which lasted 100 years. And as I told you before, we had over 1 million people die between 1876 and no, between 1865 and 1876, died of hunger, hunted down, disease, because they tried to eliminate us. Like they thought we would die like the Native Americans. There's a great book called Sick from Freedom by Downs. And it was the greatest catastrophe of the 19th century. 1/4 of the African American population died in a period of about 10 years in this country, 25%. And that's a story that no one has ever talked about. As we go forward, these stories will eventually be told by people once history, you know, like critical race theory is very important. And people are rejecting that. A lot of white conservatives, because they don't want to hear the truth about the Holocaust that African Americans lived under for so many years, and how many genocides was taking place in the African American communities, such as Tulsa and Rosewood and across the nation. And these things that people need to learn. And our children, I heard you talking about the kids, they need to know that they're standing on the shoulders and on the bodies of so many African Americans who put their lives on the line to get them to where they are now. And you know, we didn't bring them this far for them to die in the streets of America, or shoot drugs into their arms, or rot away in prisons. And that's what's so sad about so many of our young people who do not know or respect the past of what we've gone through.
The power of NAACP during the 1800s and 1900s, during the period of African Americans fighting because we were emancipated, yet we weren't granted full citizenship and full citizenship privileges. The NAACP was very instrumental in pointing that light, shining that flashlight on the injustices of America, its legislation, and how we need to make change. Now, I'm not going to date you, but you look just about my age. Could you tell them some of the landmarks that the NAACP has done throughout our history?
Okay. Well, actually, if you look at the beginning of the NAACP, which really began in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, and if you look at what we were standing for, was education, integration with education, jobs, and transportation, everything that came about. But if you go back to Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, that was an NAACP case. Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas. And many people feel as though that was the first pillar to fall towards integration in America. Then you go to 1963, the Fair Laborers Act, that was NAACP. Because if you see Dr. King marching, you always saw NAACP flags with him, or banners. And then you go 65, the Voting Rights Act, and then 68, the Fair Housing Act. These are NAACP cases, or lawyers or things who are out there working with the justice system. See, a lot of people, Dr. King, you know, like look at Dr. King and they think civil rights began with him, but the NAACP was there 50 years before Dr. King. And the NAACP made it possible for Dr. King to do what he did, because he would go into a community, but we had the organizers, and we were the ones who were organizing the community and preparing it for him to come in. This is like the Montgomery bus boycott. Rosa Parks, she was an NAACP member who sit on that bus, but she wasn't the first one. There was a number of other people, but we just didn't think they were suitable to represent. But it was the NAACP. Even today, in these small communities, there's a lot of
President Brown, for our younger viewers, the bus boycott, pivotal movement. I mean, we brought an industry, we brought a commercial industry to their knees. What, for those who don't know, because American history had pretty much whitewashed the African American experience of American history, what was going on with the bus boycott?
The bus boycott and Montgomery bus boycott, African Americans had to sit in the back of the bus or had to give up their seats to a white patron if they got on the bus and there weren't any seats.
So is paid nothing to get on the bus? So African Americans got on the bus for free?
No, they had to still pay.
Oh, they had to pay and then give up their seat?
Give up their seat, exactly.
Okay.
And public transportation was a big thing in Montgomery because we had a lot of domestic workers who used the public service, buses to go into the white neighborhoods to do the work. So when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, and she was jailed. And when she was jailed, and that's what really started the Montgomery bus boycott. And I can't remember how many days this boycott went on. And that's when Dr. King actually hit the scene as a young man. I think he was like 26 years of age.
Yeah. Yes. So, okay, so this is now the emergence of Dr. King on a national level. And they decided to not take it.
Exactly. Well, they decided to boycott the system and start bringing down the economy in Montgomery. And that's the thing, money talks. And the African American community found different ways of transporting people, like carpooling, and they came together behind this particular issue. But the city began to see that it was costing them money. And that's one of the things that helped in this boycott cause of the money that was costing the city.
So the black dollar had power because now you've shut down one of the biggest money makers for the city, the transportation, which serviced the black community because they were the essential workers, or again, the commodity to all their wealth and luxury.
Exactly. That's the whole thing. Once we get control of the dollar and our dollars, and that's the language they understand.
But in their negotiation, because once their dollars they started losing their dollars and their lifestyle started to be threatened, they came up first with a little haphazard offer to Dr. King and the NAACP.
Yes, they did. I'm not really sure exactly what the offer is at this time, but yes, I do recall that happening.
So Dr. King said, no, it's going to be under our terms or it's going to continue going.
Exactly.
Yes. So in that boycott, the greatest victory, one of the great victories was the simple fact that, one, they had the right to sit wherever they want and not give up their seat to a white person, which was important. But one of the most important things is that he now got them to hire African Americans, especially in predominantly black roots.
Exactly. Yes, that's one of the great things that did happen. But there was laws that came out of it for transportation across the nation that you cannot, discriminate in. I can't think of the exact law, but it became a national law where you cannot discriminate in transportation.
That is so right. So the NAACP set up the model of, one, how to bring an industry to its knees, and two, because of that, we now have national laws in terms of transportation. One of the biggest problems that my father and my grandfather used to talk about is that they used to take the train because, we had family in South. We were living in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. So taking the train, there would be a huge level of discrimination. You're paying for your fare, yet you can only sit in certain cars.
Yes, the interstate and commerce law, I believe, forced the country to integrate the trains and things across America.
Mm. So people really didn't realize the power of that actual movement. And history reflects it as just, a little civil disobedience.
Well, let me back up. At the time, people did realize the power of that. It's just today, because people have gotten so used to, or they didn't, things that's been given to them, and they don't realize who fought for these freedoms they have today.
Mm.
At the time, those were great victories, but it's just that, it's been 60, going 70 years almost in the
Hmm.
past, but that's um, not really that long ago. And the reality is that a person was not fully free in this country until 1965, the Voting Rights Act. Up until that time, people born before 1965 didn't have all the rights of citizenship in many ways, but it was not until 1965 and beyond was a person born totally free, African American, in this country. And that was when the 1965 Voting Rights Act came about.
And now, not only do we have economic power, because the black dollar, and in this country, blacks make up 38% of the consumers. So we have economic power in terms of paying them. But we were now going for the political, because the laws of our country, in terms of critical race theory, were designed to oppress people of color. So, so
Well,
go ahead.
you know, uh, that's an enigma about the black dollar. We have consumer money,
Yeah.
and which is a little different, and but we don't have, and it doesn't circulate in the community like it should. Goes out of the community. I was looking at a documentary about Tulsa, where a dollar in that community, Black Wall Street, was circulating that community at least 9 or 10 times before it left out. But now in our Black communities, we have money just going out. It's called consumer money.
Well, the black dollar, in terms of the black dollar or consumerism, 20 2000, what was it? 9. The black dollar consisted of $2.4 trillion. And of the $2.4 trillion, it spent an average of 8 hours alone in the black community.
Yes, and that's frightening. And we could have become self-sufficient if for that. But one of the other problems we have is this: we have Black communities, and we pay tax, but we're not in control of the community and how the tax are spent in our communities. In these cities, we pay a great deal of tax, but a lot of money goes into the suburbs and to other places. So, and property value is also a big issue in the inner cities, where property values a lot of times are in the Black community are uh, low. So you don't have the tax base that, say, your more suburban area have. And that's a real crucial issue when it comes to funding of schools and other things, because there's schools are dependent upon your tax base, and which is an unfair way of determining your education.
Yes, and also in terms of schools, not only does our state tax, our county tax go to that specific area, and black areas are low valued, and also the worst thing about it is that they are low valued on purpose. And,
Yes,
go ahead.
there's a great book called Savage Inequalities by, I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name, not Zukov, I can't, but it's called Savage Inequalities. People really do need to read that. And the final chapter states, Black schools raise people to serve, and the more affluent schools raise people to lead. And that was the final analysis of the author who wrote Savage Inequalities.
Okay, so now we went through that period of now if we spent more money in the black communities on black stores, we can become that economic force that we need and empowering each other if we could just circulate. But I digress on that. That's a whole nother show, believe me. And I'd love to have you back when we bring that, when we revisit that. But also, one of the biggest goals of the NAACP was to actually the voters' rights and legislation.
Yes, from the very beginning with W.E.B. Du Bois, it was about voters' rights. If you look at the original documents informing the NAACP, it was about voters' rights and suffrage. So, and even brought forth women's rights and suffrage with the first document, because women didn't get the right to vote until 1921, I believe, if I'm mistaken. But anyway, it was later.
Yes. Oh, by the way, the author was Jonathan Kozol.
Kozol, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, one of the big, what people don't understand, but the last couple of elections, we did a great deal of shows based upon our youth and not wanting to vote, feeling like their vote didn't count and it didn't matter. Yet they weren't looking at how hard the white communities were and white legislators in terms of suppressing and oppressing their vote, getting them not to vote, getting them to think, of course it doesn't matter because it's not going to make any change. The power of the vote brings, as we see, great change.
Yes, and that's what the great fear is today with the conservatives. We showed the power of the vote when we got Obama elected in 2009, 2008, 2009, and that frightened white America. And as you see, after Obama was elected, you began to see a sea change in attitudes, and a lot of America began to go conservative. In West Virginia, especially, West Virginia was a deep blue state until Obama got elected. And no, actually, I worked the state at the time and going to different communities, and for some reason they didn't like Obama, even though he was keeping West Virginia afloat with the money from the Affordable Care Act. And they didn't realize that, well, they did realize it, that West Virginia was getting like $660 million a year from the Affordable Care Act. And that's the only thing that kept the state afloat, because they had bragged that we were always in the black, and West Virginia was not one of the states that went in the red during that period of time in 2009-10, when we had this economic downturn in this country. It was due to that money. And I would point that out to them in West Virginia when I would speak to people, and they just sort of shrugged it off. But it's element of racism there when it came to Obama. Like I said, I did a speech one time about why do white West Virginians love their black athletes but hate their black president. And it was just one of those type things that I saw. I mean, if you go to a West Virginia game, you see them crazy.
Well, let's see. A lot of it comes from the biggest piece of fiction in American history. And people to this day still believe that the content in the movie, The Birth of a Nation, is absolutely true. The biggest problem that white America has is black rule.
That's true, but I think if you go back to 1980, let me see when Reagan was in office, about 81, 82. I remember reading an article. It says white men are becoming a minority in the workforce. And from that time on, there's been this here movement thinking, and no one will ever question the fact, why would white men have 49% of the jobs in the labor force when they were only 25% of the nation? But there was a big article about that. And right now, it's that fear of whites becoming a minority in this country by 2044. That's the date they said whites will become a minority, but no one is looking at it from that point of view where you're still going to be the largest minority at 49% of the population, and you still would have a certain level of control. But when we have the different minorities who come together, then we have more power. And the last election showed that it was the Black vote in Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Atlanta that propelled Joe Biden to the presidency. And that's what I told Joe Manchin yesterday. And a lot of these here voter suppression laws, 14 states have passed them, but all that is a cover for the fact that the real target is the African American vote in those 4 cities that are crucial in the state in electing a president.
Okay, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that conversation with Joe Manchin. I really, really want to hear that. In fact, a lot of America wants to hear that because right now, in terms of the biggest thorn in our side, he is Donald Trump personified right now. So we're going to talk about Joe Manchin and that conversation, and we'll be back. 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Yitkedal v'yitkedash shmei Rabbah, v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah.
Our often repeated prayers,
Although we may be different,
Yet similar.
as we reach out to our Creator,
we offer all praise.
And we seek forgiveness.
we ask for peace in our hearts, in our minds, and in our spirits. Amen.
All right, we're back, and I'm with the president of the NAACP in West Virginia, Mr. Owen Brown. Now, last time we talked, something sparked. Now, last time we talked, the president of the NAACP went and spoke to Joe Manchin, in which he got a lot of political platitude, but no action. From that point, West Virginia, the NAACP, and a couple of other civic groups had the march on Manchin. Take us from that point.
Well, we've had not just the march on Manchin, we had people at his offices in Morgantown, Charlestown, and then there was the Poor People's Moral Monday March, and then there was we're having a Black Voters Count march coming up, and on the way to DC. I don't know if you're familiar with Black Voters Count.
Yeah.
And anyway, they're stopping in West Virginia, but there's been a lot of activity in the state, not just Black folks, but other progressive groups, because they see what's happening, and he's becoming a detriment to the state, because a lot of finance, like with You can't, some places you cannot get a high Wi-Fi in the state of West Virginia.
Right.
During that time of COVID, there's some places where you're trying to teach over line. There's whole sections of the state who cannot get Wi-Fi, and kids couldn't learn. So become a detriment. His stance is becoming a detriment because in those bills, there's money for those type of things. And we got a lot of poor people in West Virginia. Some places don't have running water as of this date.
So the obstruction of the infrastructure bill, he's hurting West Virginia. I mean, that infrastructure money could improve West Virginia by at least 70% in 2-3 years.
Yes, and not only the infrastructure money, the money that President Biden wants to give for care of the elderly,
Right.
also for working mothers. See, West Virginia has a very elderly population, have a very high problem with elderly taking care of their grandchildren because of the meth problem and the drug problems in West Virginia. People don't realize has the worst drug problem in the country when it comes to meth and opioids. Obama had to come here when he was in office to try to address that particular issue, especially in the southern part of the state. So there's a lot of things he is hurting West Virginia. Even the governor, Justice, who's a Republican, who was a Democrat and became a Republican, has also spoke out against Manchin when they were trying to get the money to come into West Virginia. The governor said, yes, I support that, but Manchin, standing firm. And I don't know what the deal is with him. It's sort of insane talking with him. I guess the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over the same way and trying to get a different result. And with him trying to get bipartisanism, it's not working. When somebody tells you, like Mitch McConnell, that no, you're still at it, but then that's insane. And that was a conversation yesterday we had with our committee of 6. And one gentleman there was 84 years of age by the name of George Rutherford, who lives over in Charlestown, and he had to school Joe Manchin about the filibuster. And then there was a Reverend Ronald English who marched with Dr. King. He was also in the meeting and was schooling Joe Manchin about the filibuster, and from life experiences. And so we came in pretty hard on the filibuster issue, but his thing was always that, well, if we get rid of the filibuster, when the next group get in, then they'll just flop things around and they'll push through all their bills and cut us out if they have a majority. And I said, all filibuster does is this: it's a shield to protect other people. And I said we should have a vote on everything so the public know exactly how their congressperson or senator is voting on an issue. Right now with the filibuster, we don't know if our senators are for or against certain issues. And actually he agreed that it was a shield for, senators, and their vote.
Well, the filibuster was created to stop them changing the laws of civil rights. We're looking at one. The filibuster came in to stop the advancement from the slaves in terms of giving them reparation. Everybody disputed that, and then it got filibuster, and the bill died. Then we got the filibuster. My most favorite one came in terms of civil rights, where the record holder, Mr. Strong Thurmond, 24 hours, 8 minutes and 32 seconds to bust the filibuster, to kill the bill on civil rights. Mr. Prejudice Strong Thurmond, who believed that white America ruled, yet he hated African Americans so much that he fathered one.
Yes, and that came up yesterday at our meeting from George Rutherford, who's 85 years of age and who lived through that. And then I'm not quite sure how Reverend Ronald English is. He might be pretty close to that also. And they were schooling Joe Manchin, and the only thing he could do is sort of bow his head and shake his head. Yeah, I'm aware of these things, but being aware of them and not acting on them is a totally different story. And again, then there was Zaki McGill, Dr. McGill, who was very impassionate towards Manchin, came right at him. It was a very aggressive approach. Dr. Zaki McGill, he's a doctor, but he's also a psychiatrist, and came right at Joe Manchin. And we raked him under the coals pretty good on this filibuster issue. Was one of the issues, but I don't know if you are aware, he put out a compromise to for the People Act.
Yes.
He sent it to us that very night. We were one of the first people to get this, and we didn't address it with him because we didn't want the public to think that we were for this one way or another. But we did ask the question: you have this compromise bill here, but you're saying that HR 1 would never pass. You'll never vote for HR 1. I'm saying, well, what's the point of putting this compromise bill out? Well, he said, well, in the form of this HR 1, I can't vote for it, but it might come in a different form that with the John Lewis Act that might have some add-ons to be able to address these type of things. But but again, the question is, do you have the votes? And he said, I do not have the votes. Cannot get 10 Republicans to vote. So I said, then what happens then with the voting rights and the voting suppression laws? We're just still in a bad situation, especially in 2022. We could be up the creek.
Right. Well, the filibuster was also very important and instrumental in blocking everything that Obama tried to push through. But let's look at this. He's got a compromise bill that basically does nothing. It's the bill in name only. He takes the teeth out of it, giving the bill power or laws to make changes. It's just a title.
It's he's sort of deflecting a diversion.
Yes.
To take the heat off him, saying, I'm working, but the heat's on him. I mean, it's ugly. And I told him yesterday when I first started speaking, I realized you got a lot of heat on you, and it's going to continue.
That's what I'm talking about. Keep the pressure on them. And, here's the thing. Joe Manchin should be very loyal to West Virginia and the black community because he won by a very slim margin. Yeah,
19,371, I believe. And that's why I pointed out to him in the letters and things that we have over 20,000 votes in West Virginia, and I'm quite sure no one voted for Patrick Morrissey because, like I said, Joe Manchin came to us in 2018 and stayed with us for hour and a half to talk and answer questions and to get our support in 2018.
Right.
Our numbers, which actually you pull them out, is what propelled him to victory. And I'm quite sure he looks at that because in the call and post, when I stated that, they really sort of emphasized that. And, he got a hold of that because once they got a hold of that article, they called us for another meeting. So, I mean, he called us. We didn't call him. And actually, we were supposed to have met from 3 to 4. But then I get a call that morning from his staff person said, well, Senator Manchin said he could meet with us at 2:30 and still have the other hour. So he gave us 90 minutes with him, which was, sort of extraordinary. I know these guys don't give up that much time.
I think in terms of the pressure on Joe Manchin, we should take a page from the bus boycott. No, We are not taking compromises with you. It is our way or it's no way. I think that fire should be kept up under him. In fact, for those people who are not in West Virginia and who are in other states, I want you to call your senators, call your House reps, call your state reps, and tell them, put the pressure on Manchin. We need that filibuster busted.
The thing is, I started talking to him about his legacy and history. And I asked him, how do you think history is going to judge you? And it could be very harsh towards you. Depends on what you do here. It's your legacy that you're dealing with at this time. And I don't know if it's seeking in because, at this time, he's a wealthy man. And the only thing he got is his legacy, how history is going to judge him. And I think that's an approach because he seemed to just sort of look. I don't know if anybody ever approached him in that manner, but these politicians at this age, he's 75 years old, and he's looking at legacy issues and history, how it's going to judge him.
Well, I'm sure for Senator Manchin, a wealthy man, a white man in West Virginia, it's very uncomfortable for a group of black men to get in his face.
Well, I'm quite sure because he brought his staff person by the name of Kevin Watson, who is African American, and his legal attorney to sit with him.
Really?
Had Kevin answer questions.
Really? He played that card? Really?
Yep. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, yes. Here's my black representative over here. Man, come on.
He sat there with him and he said, well, there's questions I can't answer. So he called Kevin in, Kevin Carson, that's his name.
And the Willie Lynch letters, you know what they called his attorney?
No.
Negro whisperer.
Okay.
That's all it is. That's the second oldest trick in terms of getting people of different races to follow along with you, is to bring a representative. Oh, if he's okay with him, he must be okay with me. But no, all that is just one man on Manchin's team that's making money. Yet he's got how many in the state of West Virginia?
I'm sorry.
How many people in the state of West Virginia? The population?
About 1.8 million right now.
Okay, so he's got one black man making money from him that he's sending out to sit in front of other black people. But 1.8 million people are suffering because of his acts and actions. No, ain't nobody falling for that bull crap. Look, ain't nobody falling for the okie doke. No, I mean, look, I think the next conversation with Joe is like, no, we're not talking to you again until you get there in the Senate and vote that filibuster out. I think that should be the next conversation. We've got very limited time. We just went through the primaries in New Jersey. So we've got midterms coming up, right? The Republicans have done everything in all of these states to actually gerrymander the vote. So basically, even in heavily populated black areas, they now moved it so that the white vote outvotes or cancels the black vote, so that these white people can stay in power. We got Trump trying to come back into power and keep the same bullcrap going, and we don't have that luxury of time to sit up here and play patty cake with Joe and his black representative. No. Bust boycott rules or technique. Our way. Or next election, you can just sit there with your millions of dollars and be out of office.
And that's what's probably going to happen. Like I explained to Joe Manchin, I said, 70% of the people in the state voted for Trump, but they're no fools when it comes to money in their pockets. They're going to vote their pockets first, and Joe Biden has put money in their pockets. And so there's beginning to be a real disconnect, although their politics and liking Trump does not always mean that they're going to be against Joe Biden's money coming into the state, because 71% of the people in the state of West Virginia, the polls show that they like what Biden's doing, and it's for the fair,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the whole thing is that the polls also show that over 70% of the people of West Virginia like Biden's thing on the Voting Act.
Voting Act, right, exactly. And I'm with a number of groups called Democracy West Virginia and other groups, and they're organizing. These are white groups who are organizing out there and trying to get it for the People's Act passed. But one of the things have encouraged everybody to do, one of the problems that we deal with is the media is shutting us out. So I'm encouraging them, wherever there's a public forum, such as a city council meeting, get on that forum and start talking about the people, for the People's Act. And if filibuster these city council meetings, have 10, 15 people come before them saying, for the People's Act. Also, the school boards meetings, the same thing. Go there and filibuster them and get the information out. Once people see the information, they end up agreeing that, hey, we should have a fair voting laws across the country. It's just that the media is controlling what people hear and what people see. Like I'm saying, they don't show me up in this part of the state at all. My hometown, they won't print anything in the paper about me.
Well, here's one of the, I want to back this up a little bit. Here's one of the things that I found incredibly ironic. They voted for Obama. Obama campaigned and helped Manchin. Obama fueled a lot of money into West Virginia. Joe Biden, the media is calling him Obama 2.0. He's looking to fuel things in terms of West Virginia as well as the rest of the country. Yet, with everybody in the country stating that no, these programs and policies that are in place that are going on does nothing but help our country. We look at, one of the things that got passed that they really gutted with President Biden was the second stimulus package, which basically he had it scheduled where it would reduce child poverty by at least 38%, and they scaled it down to reduce it to 24%. I mean, that could have helped West Virginia incredibly.
Yes.
And yeah, and we talked about the infrastructure in terms of getting in Wi-Fi, rebuilding the schools and improving that, roads, because Trump came into West Virginia and said, we're going to bring back clean coal, we're going to bring this, and we're going to have some money in your pockets. And what did he do for West Virginia?
He did nothing. Like I said before, Trump groomed the people in West Virginia like a pedophile would groom a child. No, really, I understood this. My background psychology, he's here 6 times more than any other state. I'm quite sure they looked at West Virginia and their market study to see what the state was. Everything that he believed white, lowly educated people, and that's who they came, because he made them feel good about their whiteness. In other words, he sold them a counterfeit bill that white skin was worth something in this country. But the reality is, in the scheme of the world, everything else, it doesn't matter, because they did not progress at all in West Virginia. Actually, we lost more people, and we're losing a delegate seat this year in Congress. So instead of having 3 U.S. reps, they're going to have 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so the downward spiral, and there's a lot of people, when they hear about West Virginia, it's always something negative. Like the governor said he don't want Obama, it wouldn't be okay for Obama to come in West Virginia. Then we had a white female called President Obama's wife, Michelle,
Mo-
and and I got the lady fired. She was down from Clay County, but there's been incidents over that has given West Virginia a black eye. And in our society today, very progressive people and companies and things don't want to move into the state with this here attitude, or at least about racism, and they don't want their kids to come. They won't build factories here. Why should we come to a state that we think is racist? And that's what's really happening. It's been that way for a while now. It's that stereotype. There's a lot of the stereotyping that black eye gives West Virginia a black eye before the nation, because it seems like every other year something comes out of West Virginia that's racist, and the nation takes a hold of, and it's West Virginia's second most racist state behind Kentucky, or the first most racist state in the country. And that black eye has been bad for business in West Virginia.
Yes, it's kind of like Mississippi.
Thank God for Mississippi. That's what we say in West Virginia. I mean, really, he says, thank God for Mississippi.
Yes, thank God for Mississippi being on the bottom, helping us out. But yeah, Trump came in there, and he had the same technique as Johnson, where he said, if you tell the poorest white person that you're going to elevate their status above the most successful black person, you don't even have to pick their pockets. They'll put their money in a wheelbarrow and deliver it to you. And that's what I see it happen, has happened. And he has done nothing for them, yet now they seem to be stuck, or I mean, you would know the climate better. Are they still stuck on the pro-Trump, or are they now waking up and saying, wait a minute, we just got screwed?
I think in time they're going to see that, just because of all the different, just for Black Lives Matter example, we had all white communities marching as Black Lives Matter groups all across the state, and in support. And I believe as we continue this, like I said last time, with all this here publicity going towards Joe Manchin and his stands, I believe people are beginning to read why these things are going against him, and what, it's having a reverse psychology or reverse effect on West Virginians. They're beginning to look at it. Why are people so upset with Joe Manchin across the country? All of a sudden, we're going to read H.R. 1. What's in H.R. 1 for us? Or what's in the Biden plan for us? And I think it's going to have a reverse effect on the people in West Virginia, especially if it goes down. And because we have a lot of elderly people, we have a lot of poverty kids who live in poverty, free lunches, some whole counties of free lunches, and things of that nature really help West Virginia.
Well, now we're long past doing a break, and I'm surprised that my producer isn't yelling on the screen. So now we're with Owen Brown, president of the NAACP of West Virginia, and we're going to come back and talk more about the conversation with Joe Manchin and seeing what we can do to change his mind to get him to work in our favor. Now, yes, now this may be a little bit longer because we've got some housekeeping to take care of. So we're going to see you right after this break.
Small business. That's a great way to have generational wealth. If you're a minority business, you may be struggling to keep your head above water. Why? In 2019, the Black community spent $1.5 trillion because the Black dollar lifespan, 28 days Asian communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the Black communities. Major brands target the Black media, TV, and radio. That's why Blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie. Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful Black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new Black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased the exposure of Afro Sheen and made billions of dollars for Bobby Johnson. Where are you going to find a good show for a low price? We have a talk show called What You Got to Say. What You Got to Say is a Black-owned talk show streaming live on YouTube channels, Facebook Live. What You Got to Say has a diverse audience from 18 to 62 years old, and their gross income range from $32,000 to $122,000 a year. That exposure will get you a good slice of the $1.5 trillion. Tell us about your business. Maybe able to get on our Black-owned spotlight. In 4 weeks, your business can go from surviving to thriving. To find out how you can get what's yours, email sales@squiresignage.com. They're waiting to hear what you got to say.
Okay, welcome back. Yes, looking at some of the things that people have put on message that's screaming across. One of the comments that came through a lot, President Brown, was that some people wanted to know what can they do to help.
Okay, join your local NAACP. If you don't have a local NAACP, join the national NAACP. The money that we get goes towards attorneys and towards the larger issues. It's only $30 a year to join the NAACP. But if you want a lifetime membership, it's $750 for a lifetime membership. And then there's a diamond membership, it's $1,500. But join the NAACP. There is strength in numbers. When we go before somebody and we could tell for example, in a city that, hey, we have 1,000 members in our branch at the NAACP, these politicians look and they start counting, because the local elections in many places are very, very close. And that a block of 1,000 voters may make the difference on whether a person gets elected or not. And that's where the strength comes in numbers. Politicians can count. And that's the main thing, they can count. See, I used to be a lobbyist, and I would ask a politician, when do you react? He said, well, a red light comes on in my office. I get 20 calls in one day against the issue or for an issue. I'm counting. They're always counting, and politicians are always nervous, even though they might hold an advantage and will get reelected, but they're always nervous about an election because sometimes they do get upset. So join your local NAACP or join the national, or you can go online and find out where the local NAACP is or how to join the national NAACP.
All right. With your meeting with Manchin, how did it end, and what are you projecting is going to happen?
Well, we started talking about this bill, his compromise. He said, well, if there's this HR 104, the People's Act, will not go through as is. He said, because there's 800 pages to this bill, and that we don't see a lot of stuff in this bill. And he said, what more than likely is going to happen, we're going to take the John Lewis Voters' Rights Act and expand on it to encompass some of this stuff. But I don't have the 10 votes yet from the Republicans, but I'll keep working and try to make it a bipartisan bill. And our position was, what happens to us? Because if you cannot get a bipartisan support, and he basically just said, well, I will keep trying. I believe that I do have at least 5 or 7 people who are bipartisan, and so that's the thing that we keep pressing. But again, he did reach out. He's feeling the heat from not just us, but from all across the state, because I did bring up Patrick Morrissey, his opponent in the last election. And, I said, hey, this is a person.
Morrissey's looking really good right now. And so, I mean, there's no sense you acting like a Republican wearing Democrat. Hey, when Joe Manchin, when Jackass Joe calls again, just basically say this: kill the filibuster. That's all you got to do.
Well, and that was the pretty unanimous coming from all 6 members on the committee. Especially, it was so eloquent coming from George Rutherford, who's 85, and I believe Reverend Ron English might be around 80, speaking to him in real time about what it meant to them and how they dealt with it and had to deal with the filibuster and the civil rights issue. And so he's got the message. And then Dr. Zaki McGill, we had Dr. Jerry Carr, who's also one of our state presidents there, and who was really hammering him pretty good. There was no holds barred from them. I was a good guy. We had some good cops, bad cops, moderates in between, but they were hammering him pretty good, and he got the message. He heard us. He had to hear us as what we were saying to him.
This compromise bill is trash, okay? And he doesn't have the votes. If he wants to get something passed, kill the filibuster. As simple. I mean, as smart as he is, as much money as he has, and the understanding of numbers, he can't sit up here and pacify people with, I've got a compromise bipartisan bill. Well, if they're not being bipartisan against the other bills, what makes you think they're going to be partisan with your bill?
Yeah, and that came up, when they wouldn't vote for a commission to study January 6th.
There you go.
When people were trying to kill him, So why do you think they're going to be bipartisan here on a bill? And they've been playing a game. The point I brought up to was this, which was sort of, I said, McConnell says he's going to try to take Biden out of office, and same way he did Obama, making one-term president. I asked him, I said, Senator Manchin, when the president fell, the country fails. Am I correct? And the people suffer. So how do you deal with that?
I mean, we saw that. That was our last president. He failed and the country failed.
Yeah. So, and anyway, I guess the thing, some of my speeches I would give, I said, where does politics end and treason begin? If I purposely cause harm to the country, then that's a treasonous act. And McConnell has pointed out that I'm going to make Joe Biden fail. So he's going to fail, the country's going to fail, and people are going to suffer or be hurt. So to me, that's a treasonous act. I believe people should start talking in that type of language. Say these people are committing treason by fighting against what's good for the country or trying to make the country fail. And I think it's all about language out there. And I don't know if people are afraid to say stuff like that this is a treasonous act or what, but these people have been committing treason since Obama, McConnell and them trying to make the country fail.
Right, definitely. Well, we've got to close the show. So last words for you, President Brown?
Well, join the NAACP, not just join, but be active in the NAACP. There's a place for everybody in the NAACP. There are many committees. We're not just about going out there, legal redress and fighting the fight because somebody gets in trouble, but there's education committee, health committees, political action committees, veterans committees, all these type of things. There's a place for you in the NAACP. So please go out and join. $30 a year, less than about 10%, 10 cents a day, less than 10 cents a day for freedom.
President Owen Brown, NAACP President of West Virginia. It has been truly an honor to have you on our show. And you have reminded us of how we've gotten to where we are, and also inspired us, or know me, to getting us to the next step and the next level. As he said, politicians understand numbers and they can count very well. I don't care if Joe Manchin is not your senator. Call his office. Tell him, kill the filibuster. I don't care if you are a Democrat or a Republican. These things that are in place, that are being blocked, has a great deal to helping you and your children have a better quality of life, to rebound from this pandemic that has almost destroyed our country. Call Joe Manchin. Tell him, kill the filibuster. Only in that are we going to get things passed, because there are not many opportunities in our nation's history that we have had a sitting president that wanted to do what's fundamentally right for everyone. And if these senators are getting in their way, call them, tell them, kill the filibuster, or call them